Combine Week action. Welcome into the PHNX Cardinals podcast, presented to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's top-rated sportsbook. Be sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Johnny Venerable. He is Bo Brock on the eve of the NFL Combine as we await our flight tonight to Indianapolis. Lots to talk about, Bo. First of which being we're excited because now it's become real. Draft season is upon us. The big boards are starting to culminate here. What do you like? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Have we already reached like peak draft crazy season, right? We're already starting to see at 3 that the Arizona Cardinals are taking some big swings, kind of reminiscent of the previous regime, or is it just already like in Monti, we trust? We're going to just let it rip here on a Monday to take away from our new head coach. It's one of his many JG-isms. We're going to let it rip today. We're going to get into some deep conversation about that 3rd overall pick. Do you stick and pick? Do you take Jalen Carter? Do you take Will Anderson Jr.? Do you take Tyree Wilson? Do you take somebody else? Do you trade out? We're already seeing some prominent draft experts, analysts start to see the Arizona Cardinals kind of move away from what we thought was the truth, that it's down between Jalen Carter, the big dog in the middle from Georgia, or Will Anderson Jr., the edge out of Bama.
Picking spreads. Love that you've just wrapped up your top 100. We've got a lot of people we rely on. We're going to talk a little bit about our guy Daniel Jeremiah's big board. He's pretty tapped in. He, of course, is going to be covering it with Rich Ivan, the on-the-field workouts. And Bo and I will be live tomorrow from the NFL Combine on Press Row, hoping to get you guys exclusive content. We'll get you guys exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. But hell, let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's look at Daniel Jeremiah's top 10 big board. He released his entire 50 updated today, Bo. But here's the top 5 as it relates to the Arizona Cardinals, I believe, because you've got some options here, and then you've got some folks that obviously won't be an option looking at quarterbacks and tight ends. But if it's got Jalen Carter as the best player in the draft, it was unfortunate. We read this morning, Bo, per numerous reports, Jalen is not going to do any on-the-field workouts. He's going to meet with teams, but per his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, which always perks your ears up a little bit, he's not going to participate.
Next question.
Yes, but you know who will participate? Our guy, Will Anderson Jr., at least he's going to do, quote, some on-the-field workouts according to Rap Sheet. That's music to my ears. I want a guy who goes out there and competes. I was hoping that would also be Jalen, but we'll have to wait and see. Those are the belle of the ball. And then you've got some quarterbacks, of course, Bryce Young being showcased, the 3rd overall player on the big board. Bijan Robinson is 4th overall on Daniel Jeremiah's big board, which is interesting. Not something I'm going to touch at this time, but Devin Witherspoon, cornerback from Illinois, number 5. The aforementioned Tyree Wilson, who I don't think is participating. He's still got a little bit of a foot, which again,
right.
You've got a foot. You played at Texas Tech and your production was meh. I don't want no part of you, but we're going to have to wait and see. Skoronski, the tackle from Northwestern, a little bit undersized for my liking. Can you take him and play him at guard? Is that worth the top 10 pick? Then you've got C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, and Dalton Kincaid, Utah tight end. That's your top 10. But really, it should just be your top 2. If you're an
right. That's what I'm saying. Is it peak? Have we already peaked as far as it? We're like, it's draft season officially, I think, as of today. And we're already hitting peak draft crazy season. Maybe paralysis by overanalysis already with these 2 top prospects that we got, some pretty solid looks at. Obviously, Bama, each and every season they make deep runs. And we got a good look at Will Anderson Jr., a guy who was a Heisman contender to start the season. And I think he backed it up this year. Obviously, people wanted to see more from the consensus top prospect, non-quarterback going into the season, and maybe didn't get that. And then you've got Jalen Carter, who was on the most talented team this season and last season as far as the Georgia Bulldogs. But you're right. Yeah, Tyree Wilson. I mean, I think he's probably smart, right? Because his stock continues to rise despite him coming off this foot injury. And he's already been like, you already start to see some guys like Daniel Jeremiah had the Arizona Cardinals selecting Wilson last week at 3 instead of Will Anderson. You had, is it Sharp? Who does some great analysis as far as just kind of NFL schematics and analytics. He has the Arizona Cardinals taking Tyree Wilson over Jalen Carter. It's just, it's like, let's not get too cute here. If we want to get cute, let's maybe develop some packages here, have the Arizona Cardinals trade out of 3. But if you're going to stick and pick, that's going to be a tough sell to your fan base as far as taking a guy like Wilson out of the Big 12, a team that we know very well is known for its offensive side of the football, not its defensive side of the football. Look, he's a freak, right? 6'7", he's got everything that you want. But as far as what kind of competition has he faced week in and week out during his collegiate career, and what's he going to do each and every Sunday when he's going to be facing double teams, when he's going to be facing, top tackles. One thing you did say that I tend to disagree with because of where the Arizona Cardinals have put themselves. I'm not looking at a prospect like Peter Skoronski, the Northwestern tackle, is just like, hey, can he move inside and play guard? Because I think the Arizona Cardinals this is a longer play. If he's the tackle of the future, I'm fine with that. I'm not concerned about like what his immediate returns are going to be on the
football. And that's fine. That's fine. But yeah. I think, can he ever play tackle? That's the question that is more the question I was asking is,
sure,
at 6'4", like, you better hope he can play like right tackle. Because I don't know if he can play left tackle and be that small. Here's an interesting point though, but I don't disagree. I think if you fall in love with him and if you trade down, I think he's a prime trade down target for the Arizona Cardinals, no doubt. But because I do think he's plug and play somewhere on the offensive line this year, and they need help all over the place.
Right.
So, like the Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, like we're going to talk about it ad nauseum over the next, 2 months. But it is interesting. So this is an incredibly deep edge class. Last year's edge class, kind of garbage, right? Not great. We had to almost talk ourselves into the kid Karlaftis from Purdue.
Well,
right?
It was very top heavy, right? I mean, you had the top pick, Walker, you had Aiden Hutchinson.
And then there was a drop off.
Yeah.
This year, there's 9 edge prospects in Daniel Jeremiah's top 50. 9. There's 3 elite defensive tackle prospects, none of which have a first-round grade other than Jalen Carter. So I can see, if you want to rationalize it, if you're a Cardinal fan or if you're Monti Ossenfort, and you've got the same grade on both of these players, there's probably a pretty good chance if you get Jalen Carter at 3, at 35 or 34, wherever they pick, you can get an edge rusher to combat that. An edge rusher that probably had a first-round grade. Whereas supply and demand, if you take Will Anderson, you might have to take a developmental defensive lineman later on, and that's okay. But what the point I'm trying to make here is, like, there's a good chance if you take Jalen Carter, you can also get a first-round caliber edge rusher later. Whereas if you take Will Anderson, you could be looking at another Rashad Lawrence, Lecky Fotu situation where you really just don't know. And so I go back to what Michael Bidwell said. So these are their needs: front 7, corner, offensive line, but we're not going to be able to fill all of them this year. And so that would make me feel good about, okay, if you just love Will Anderson, take Will Anderson. That's okay. That's okay that you can't get Jalen and another impact. Like, we're all going to fall guilty of this, I think, over the course of the next 2 months is, yeah, but who's the next pick? Just get the first pick right. Just and then let the chips fall where they may. You control, for the most part, your own destiny at number 3. Thank the football gods above. This is a robust quarterback class. We feel like the Bears are going to trade down. The Cardinals can stick and pick and control their own destiny. They can get one of these 2 guys and feel really good about it. They can't control who's available at 34. And I think that you should not draft whomever you're going to draft at 3 based on what's available at 34, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. And it's tantalizing, right? I mean, you could kind of spin it any way you want. It's like, well, you could take Will Anderson Jr. at 3, and he's plug and play. He's already starting, edge rusher for you. You like what you saw from the 2 third-rounders from last year, and now you've got a pretty deep stable of young, talented, NFL caliber prospects that you need to develop, and the skill sets are there, and you like your coaching staff that you're putting in place to do so. Or you could get, you take Jalen Carter at 3, he becomes the anchor of your defense, starts opening up rush lanes for guys that aren't top tier talent. But, guys like Jalen Carter, they're the straw that kind of stirs the drink as far as the defensive side of the football. You look at all the success that Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rawlins had in Philadelphia. Where did most of that come from? Obviously their stout front 7, including, those four guys on the defensive line, and then Hassan Reddick. I think that, look, you can kind of spend it any way you want it. And I think at the end of the 3-day draft, you're going to probably be pretty excited about the haul that Monti Ossenfort, Dave Sears, his assistant GM, and Jonathan Gannon have accumulated. I just think that, when you start to look at things and you start to try to decipher between Carter and Anderson, I think those are your two guys, right? And then then you've got the guys who have some red flags, like a Tyree Wilson, where you really would have to trust the scouting backgrounds of the people you've just put in place, the decision makers that you put in place.
Yeah, I like this from picking spreads. It's easier to get an elite edge rusher than an elite defensive tackle. I agree with that. And I also think this might be recency bias, Bo, but I think the cupboard is not Barrett outside linebacker with what's on the roster and what you did last year. And I know that was a different regime.
Yeah.
But I think Majay Sanders and Cameron Thomas are appealing for this new unit, this new coaching staff, because they're cheap and they played last year. And when they played, and it was sparingly because of Vance Joseph, they were productive. I mean, at the end of the year, they were your most explosive set of pass rushers. And while it's not ideal going into next season with just those guys, well, you go into training camp and those guys be your starters. What do you have on the defensive line right now? Watt is gone. Zach Allen could be gone. You've got Rashad Lawrence, who can't stay healthy. Lecky Fotu's a backup. He's not a starter. I mean, the cupboard before free agency is fully bare at defensive tackle. Now, they're going to have to sign 1 or 2 or 3 players, but I do think that if you talk about need alone, Jalen Carter is more of a need than Will Anderson. Who is the better player, I think, remains to be seen. But, I mean, shit, I was watching Jalen Carter highlights last night. I remember being infatuated with the draft, the top 10, back when the Cardinals had a top 10 pick in 2020 when they took Isaiah Simmons, and everybody wanted to talk themselves into Derek Brown out of Auburn that year. I remember watching his highlights, and I said, where are the splash plays? Where are the plays where he's penetrating the line of scrimmage and sacking the quarterback? That's all Jalen Carter does.
Yeah.
His highlight reel from the last 2 years it's not Ndamukong Suh-like, but it's on that next tier below. And Derek Brown's actually turned out to be a pretty good player. So I'm just his ceiling is so effing high for that position. And so to me, it just, when I see mock draft that Sharp rolled out this morning, I mean, that's egregious. For Will Anderson Jr. to go first to the Bears and for the Cardinals to pass on Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
I cannot, he's a 2-time national champion All-American for a team that has had the most success they've had since the 80s. He's exactly what you need, and you pass on him for an ACC or a Big 12. I'm sorry, guessing game. Yeah, right. It's the ultimate. He's the ultimate. Like, you're projecting for the next level. You have no idea though.
Right. You don't even know if he could play every down. You don't know if he's a couple down, edge rusher. What's his ceiling? I know it's probably very high and it's a big swing, but you also know that if you can get a guy that like Carter right away, he's an impact maker. And you start to think about like that pick you're talking about in the second round. It's like if Monti Ossenfort comes out and these are the first bullets that he shoots, 3, he takes Carter, right? And then in the second round, he takes like a John Michael Schmitz,
Auburn, or somebody
you're
like that.
Immediately addressed with some top prospect types, to your biggest needs and some needs that, going forward, you can think of like you've got your center covered at least for the next 4 years with a second round rookie contract, and then a defensive tackle that you can get a lot of play from and a lot of reps from in Carter for potentially 5 seasons and beyond. I mean, I think that those would be slam dunks. But if you trade out of that and you start they really like a Wilson and they think they could trade down and get, take Indy's pick or take Carolina's pick and then start to work and maybe get, Wilson, and then maybe with the extra draft capital, pick up some offensive linemen. I mean, I like that the Arizona Cardinals have flexibility in really retooling this roster and really starting to kind of jumpstart this rebuild, because that's what should get Arizona Cardinals fans excited. I think that's what Seattle was able to accomplish last year. And I think they took kind of the questions out of it, right? They were pretty, as far as what they kind of went chalk as far as they take Cross out of A&M at the tackle position, and then they take some, a corner prospect, and they take the kid out of Minnesota who's the edge rush prospect. Like, they took some guys that we were familiar with that they hit on, and it just, what that does for a roster like the Arizona Cardinals, not necessarily being a bare cupboard, is like once you start to kind of fill in the gaps, it starts to make things look a little bit easier football wise, because you've got talented players that know what they're doing, and it makes things just a lot easier on game days, because these guys are just players. They're football players.
I just feel like this new regime, you can't have your first pick be that big of a swing
Right. It sets
and
a
a
rough tone.
miss.
But
It
look,
does.
Steve Keim, to his credit, he didn't. Everybody was like, hey, you got to get a guard, right? You have to go get a guard. He took like one of the highest guards, I think, in like a decade or so, in Jonathan Cooper. And the early returns on Jonathan Cooper were good, right? Everything was good until Jonathan Cooper broke his leg in a preseason game. But everybody was applauding that pick for him to take Cooper. I think it was like 7th overall. They're like, that's the ease. I feel like that's Carter, right? It's like that's the nobody's going to argue with it. You can probably plug him immediately in play until, barring an injury like we saw with Cooper. And that's unfortunate, but it wasn't like a Simmons pick where it's just like, the talent's there, but does it translate to the next level like a Wilson?
You can miss on Jalen Carter if you're Monti Ossenfort and look Michael Bidwell in the eye, or if it's Will Anderson, just say, hey, All-American, blue chip school, national champion. Like, what did you want from us? Everybody's saying this is the guy.
Right.
You can't take at 3 a kid from Texas Tech, who, by the way, is old. He's a redshirt senior, and he's got an injury, and he had 7 sacks last year, and say, well, if you hit on it, I guess you look like a genius, but you got to be 100% certain. And these guys have job security now. But, man, with what you're trying to convey to your fan base right now, Bo, I don't want to say it's okay to miss on Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, but like fans will understand. Fans will get it. It's, if they get hurt, fans understand. Like that 2013, everybody hated, Jonathan Cooper after 18 months, but they get it. He got hurt in the final preseason game. His career might be different. That draft class was awful in 2013, right? What you can't do is you can't dick around at 3 and take a project. This is your first draft pick of this new era. And you're talking about excellence and changing the culture and changing the brand. It's got to be one of these two guys, in my opinion, unless you're just given a shit ton of picks and you can move down. And speaking of moving down or up or around, you can do all those things on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, Bo. Right now, live, they have their combine odds up. Like, will the 40 time be broken? Will the bench press time be broken? How about this one? I like this one that's available right now. Bijan Robinson to the Dallas Cowboys plus 500. I love that pick. You can start getting more and more props as the week goes on, not only for the combine, but for the NFL draft. Right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, if you're thinking to yourself, well, I haven't dabbled before. What do I do? How do I get started? It's not football season. Well, first of all, every month is football season on DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use that promo code PHNX. Get this. New customers can bet a mere $5, get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Again, 5-spot, the spread, the money line, the over-under, any prop you want, they got it. Get it on DraftKings, $200 in bonus bets instantly. Only on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, only with promo code BO, PHNX. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See those show notes for details.
Johnny, myself, one of our producers, Shane, who's making the trip with us to Indianapolis. We are hours away from a top 5 beer. What am I talking about? I'm talking about an airport beer. It's tough to beat. About to jump on an airplane, beer, and it doesn't get any better than Four Peaks. It's in our terminal, Johnny. That's right. We're in Terminal 4 at Sky Harbor. That's where Four Peaks resides. That's where we're going to go have a couple cold ones before we jump on the bird and head to Indianapolis for the scouting combine. So many choices as far as the beer. Have you decided which beer you're going to have from Four Peaks yet?
Hazy.
You're going to have a hazy IPA. And that's fine. That's okay. That's kind of like the Tyree Wilson as far as the beers go. I'll probably go with the Jalen Carter, the Kilt Lifter, or you can get something, something in there that there is a Will Anderson Jr. as well. I mean, they're all top flight prospects. So it's tough. Like you're just kind of, you're nitpicking at this point because they're all delicious. They're all cold. They're all amazing. And they go crazy in the airport. Do yourself a favor. Go to Four Peaks, the location in Tempe. Enjoy yourself some cold beers. Enjoy yourself some great food, from the appetizers to the entrees to the desserts. You're going to have a great time, and the atmosphere, it's unmatched. Right there in the heart of Tempe, right there woven in the fabric of our great state of Arizona. Go watch a game. I hear KD's going to come back at some point. Why not watch Kevin Durant and the Suns play some hoops as they gear up for a nice finals run? Or watch the Coyotes, or go watch the NFL scouting combine while you get yourself Great beer, great food, and great atmosphere. Enjoy it. Hang out at Four Peaks. They've got the McDowell Mountain Music Festival going on March 3rd through the 4th. You can grab your tickets at M3Fest.com and enjoy that Wow Wheat beer while you're there. Must be 21 years or older. It's great to hear Four Peaks not only involved with us at PHNX, but of course the McDowell Mountain Music Festival. Always a great event here in our great state of Arizona. Like I said, got to be 21 years or older and enjoy it responsibly.
We're responsible, do our research here at PHNX Cardinals. This is from Waldle and Sylvie, popular radio show in Chicago. Adam Schefter was on with them earlier today. Said the Bears would like to deal the first overall pick this week at the NFL Combine. Discussed the possibility of trading down multiple times and called it, quote, a feeding frenzy. Said nobody controls the NFL offseason like Poles, the GM for the Chicago Bears. Bears could trade the number 1 pick this week to a team that needs a quarterback. Houston needs a quarterback. Producer Emma, let's see that extraordinary NFL draft order that you made. Thank you so much. Let's assume the Bears trade the first pick. And let's assume it's not to Houston. Let's assume it's to Indy. Let's assume it's to Vegas, Atlanta, Carolina. What does that do, Bo Brock, to the Arizona Cardinals? If the first overall pick is traded this week, assuming it's for Bryce Young, Houston sticks and picks. They get a kid they like, whether it's Levis, whether it's the kid from Florida, maybe it's CJ Stroud. Cardinals are sitting there at number 3. Does that increase the likelihood that they themselves trade out of number 3 if it's this early?
Well, if it's not the Colts at 4, then it puts the Arizona Cardinals in a pretty prime position to move and not drop down draft boards, right? Or like you said, you've got hungry teams, just depending on who is fortunate enough to trade up, this unbelievable just haul of draft picks, which I'm sure Chicago is going to get here. It's just no team is going to be naive enough to deal with the Cardinals first before Chicago. So Chicago is going to set the market, and the Arizona Cardinals can benefit off that. And you can have a pretty good idea of what they're going to get in return and how far do they have to fall in order to get that haul. So it's a great, I think it's just, it increases the value of 3. I think the Arizona Cardinals are in a very great, in a solid position to do whatever they want and to have options. That's what you couldn't ask for anything more for a new general manager like Monti Ossenfort. Now, it's kind of curious. I was just reading Darren Urban's latest article on AZCardinals.com about Monti Ossenfort preparing for his first combine, kind of running the show. And you're like, well, how much is this new regime, this new front office, this new scouting department going to put into what happens and what transpires in Indy? And this is what Ossenfort said. He said, quote, the on-field work, the testing is another piece of information, but I wouldn't say it's the driver of anything on what makes our decisions. So that closes the quote. If some guy runs a historic 40, or if you see a guy like, because Carter's not working out, but Anderson is, if Anderson lights up the combine, he's just going to take that as just another piece of information combined with the tape from Alabama, combined with everything that you see from the pro days. It's just pieces of information that he's going to compile. So don't put too much stock into it, but it also plays a role as far as what Monti Ossenfort's looking for, is how they evaluate what they want to do with the 3rd overall pick.
I mean, you think about luck comes into play with when you get a pick and how it fits your needs and what your rebuild look like. The Cardinals with the top, 3 or 4 pick last year, I don't think it's as advantageous as this year. And I look back to 2021 as the kind of the barometer. Now, as we fast forward to 2023, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance were the first 3 picks of that draft. And San Francisco traded up a premium to go get Trey Lance. I don't think the Cardinals are looking to move down quite as far as when Houston and Miami made those deals for San Francisco to come up and get Trey Lance. But I do think
they moved down to 12, right? They traded with Miami. They got the 12th overall pick. They got a first-round pick the next season and a 3rd-round pick for that draft. So that's kind of I think that's a decent baseline, don't you? But I think they could probably get more.
I do too. And I just, for me, like, I would have to get more. You'd have to get more. And then you basically be showcasing it to your fan base like, hey, we're in this for the long haul. This is just not about this year, and it's consistent with Michael Bidwell's messaging. But my point of which is, if you get a team this week that's not Indy, that trades to number 1, you could conceivably do a trade shortly after that ensures the Colts. If you're serious about Jalen Carter or Will Anderson, that ensures that the Colts get pick 3. I think that's the best case scenario, because I know there are a lot of people who want to move down, that want to accumulate future ones, and I get that. I just feel like the prospect of getting Anderson or Carter, you don't know what the next year's draft is going to look like and who's going to be available, and you don't know how the season's going to go. Though, in my opinion, those two things are sure things. So if you can trade down and ensure yourself of getting one of those two players, that's the best case scenario. And the only place to do that, assuming Chicago deals with somebody else, is to go from 3 to 4 with Indy, because no one's trading up for position players.
Yeah.
It's going to look like Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, because what happened right after? Kyle Pitts, Pro Bowl. Jamar Chase, Pro Bowl. Jalen Wallace, stud. Penei Sewell, Pro Bowl. J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain. You're just flush with talent. And I don't think this top 10 is as talented as that, but the point remains, you've got to get another team to go up to Chicago, to come out of left field and say, we want the first overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
So all you have to do is pick up the phone and say, Jim Irsay, you want assurance you're not going to be left at the altar again? Give us your second. And you drop down one spot. I mean, we could have a celebratory, 4 peaks this time next week, that trades, it's done. It's in the books. You've got your extra pick and you're still getting one of these 2 SEC standouts.
Yeah.
That to me is the best case scenario of any of these scenarios.
And that recently happened in 2017. It was a draft day trade, wasn't it? Chicago moved up. They went from 3 to 2 with San Francisco. I'm looking at the haul that San Francisco was able to acquire from the Bears for that, just moving up one spot. Now they take Solomon Thomas, and you can be lukewarm on Solomon Thomas. Wasn't a great pick at 3rd overall. But then they also get a 3rd round pick that San Francisco ended up trading. That turned into Alvin Kamara. And then also they ended up getting another 3rd round pick that turned into Fred Warner. They were able to turn that, just moving back one spot with Chicago, into Alvin Kamara and Fred Warner. Not too bad.
I think there's zero chance you can hold me to this. If a team not named Indy trades up to number 1, that Indy can feel comfortable waiting until the draft to trade from 4 to 3. They're going to be shitting their pants. There is a deal to be done there immediately. You make them feel like you have got 10 offers and they are fucked if they don't deal with you.
Right.
If Monti Ossenfort, they play this correctly, somebody comes up to 1, I don't know who it is. Atlanta comes up to 1 and they take Bryce Young, right? And the Bears go down. They're irrelevant now. The Bears are in the bottom half of the top 10. You got to make Jim Irsay and their GM, who's on the hot seat, and Shane Steichen, who's an offensive guy, feel like they've got to move up, or they're going to be left because they don't love, one of the other quarterbacks. That to me becomes the perfect scenario for this franchise to say, boop, we're going down one spot. Give us a bunch of picks.
Do it. Yep. You can just, as far as the fear of God, right into Jim Irsay, just right into his chest. He'd be like, we're talking to a couple teams right now. We could deal it. We got a couple of deals better than what you and Chris Ballard, who is probably on full tilt right now, just chasing a quarterback, finally a franchise caliber quarterback after playing all these over the hill vets. He's got to make a move right now. So you can, as far as get them to overplay their hand, because they're going to be in one of the most desperate situations unless they're the team that does move up to number 1 overall. And Houston, and you're saying, well, why would they do that for the 3rd best quarterback on the board? Why would they do that for, a Stroud, a Richardson, or a Levis? It's just like, well, because the pressure's on now. People are tired of what they've seen. They saw them hit the ceiling as far as where they could go with like a Phillip Rivers or veteran that plays okay and well enough, but you have a decent roster in place with Jonathan Taylor and Forrest Buckner on the other defensive side of the football. But you got to get solid quarterback play. It comes down to it. You have to get consistent quarterback play, and they just haven't done so. This is their opportunity, and you're right there. You're sniffing it. The Arizona Cardinals are in the driver's seat as far as really just kind of wringing out that washcloth as far as what type of value they could get, and still getting the best non-quarterback prospect in this draft.
Unbelievable.
It's insane.
It's unbelievable. It just goes to show you. The Cardinals in a lot of ways took care of business at the end of the year, and it wasn't by winning games. It was to be in this position right now. We got some questions on DeAndre Hopkins and could he be traded? But before we talk about that, I want to remind everybody, Underdog Fantasy right now. We talked about Kevin Durant. We think, please God, let him make his debut this week. And it's perfect time, if you haven't signed up already, for you to make your debut on Underdog Fantasy, your premier daily fantasy sports app. It does daily fantasy differently, friends. Draft your team against 5 of your friends. The highest scoring squad wins that cold hard cash for the night, or just go head to head. Maybe some of you guys took the higher in Dame Lillard's points last night. You would have cashed out hard on Underdog. Draft 6 NBA players with no positional limits. That's it. So easy to get started. If you're thinking to yourself, well, I only dabble with fantasy during the football season, there is plenty to do with daily fantasy on Underdog Fantasy. Get your fix in. Get primed and ready for next football season. Dealing with a little NBA action. We've got Major League Baseball right around the corner. Super easy to get started. All you got to do, go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Download the app. Sign up with promo code, you guessed it, PHNX. Get this. Underdog is going to match your first deposit up to $100. So again, doesn't have to be $100. Do $50, 25, 10, 5, whatever you want to do. Just do it with Underdog Fantasy and the promo code PHNX. There is no better time, I'm telling you, to be on daily fantasy sports than during the NBA playoffs. It is such a rush because, number one, everybody's playing, and that's cutthroat, man. And get in there with your buddies, 2 to 5, whatever you want to do it with Underdog Fantasy. Promo code PHNX. Get in on the action today.
As much as I'm salivating at the idea of a Four Peaks airport beer, I'm also longing for coming home from the combine Friday night, getting off the airplane, going into my house and plopping down on my More Furniture couch and just relaxing after a job well done. Hopefully a job well done. We'll see how Indy goes. I'm expecting good things. You should be as well. We're going to have all that combine coverage, but I can't wait to get there and hang out on our new sofa from morefurniture.com. I look like the hero of my house because when my wife was looking at all these furniture stores for kind of getting our living room, our kids' room, our bedroom all locked in, she was at wit's end. And I said, why don't you check out More Furniture? And she did, and we just started rolling as far as what our new lineup looked like in our living room, our dining room, our kids' room, our bedroom. They've got some doorbusters right now that you don't want to miss out on, like our power recliner that we have here at the studio. If you've seen us just hanging out, watching games, we're doing it comfortably. We're doing it in style. You could do it as well. Save it at under $500. You get this limited time doorbuster at More Furniture. You got to drop in and check them out right now. 44th Street, McDowell, or online, morefurniture.com. If you have any questions, they got that live local chat coming right to your phone and also coming right to your desktop. See more details on special financing, morefurniture.com. Pimp out your living room, bedroom, dining room, kids' room. Do it now, morefurniture.com. Am I seeing that Carson Wentz in Washington? Is that experiment over?
It is, yeah. Is his NFL career over? I think that's a fair question. Goodbye, Carson. Hello, DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, once upon a time, the framework for the D-Hop deal back in 2020, where Steve Keim was able to pull off that magical deal with Bill O'Brien. That was done at the NFL Combine, the framework for that. The two of them were seen out at St. Elmo's putting this deal together and changed the Cardinals' future and Bill O'Brien's future. He was shortly unemployed after that deal. Will DeAndre Hopkins?
Cocktail?
Yeah.
Discussing deals right. And that what is it? Just opening up the nasal cavities there with the shrimp cocktail and talking about deals, banging out deals for top flight wide receivers. Now, this weekend, Pro Football Focus put together a deal, just kind of a mock trade for the Arizona Cardinals. And it was a 2nd and a 5th round pick from the New York Giants. Now, the Giants were a playoff team, so that 2nd round pick is a little bit deeper into the 2nd round than I think Cardinals fans would like. But I asked, Cards fans, Johnny, if they would pull the trigger on this deal, and it was an overwhelming response of no. And I think, we talked about it on Friday. I don't know if the Cardinals should be in business of giving up 2 potential draft picks for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, with the highest being a 2nd round pick.
I'm going to make a prediction right now. Fans are going to be disappointed by what comes back for DeAndre Hopkins, no matter what it is, because it's D-Hop, right? And we all love DeAndre Hopkins. But I think there's a group of Cardinal fans who don't watch this show. First of all, welcome, come watch it, that feel like DeAndre Hopkins is not going to get traded. Well, you know what else happened this weekend, Bo? There was momentum from other insiders, not named Jordan Schultz, who came on this show and talked about it 2 weeks ago with us, that are saying, yeah, D-Hop's getting dealt. It's happening. He's going to get traded. So it's like, okay, when you can finally digest that, I'm not talking about the fine 154 people watching this program right now, but everybody else, DeAndre Hopkins getting traded is what's best for the Cardinals. And also what's best for them is to try to get the best deal they can. If you looked at the same post, Bo, it was Giants fans, and we joked about this off air, saying, oh, that's too much for DeAndre Hopkins.
Right.
And we covered that ad nauseum last week.
Forget about it.
Yeah, man, we got Kenny Galladay, Gabagool. No, it's gonna cost at least a second round pick to get D-Hop.
Right.
Giants fans, be thankful. Nobody you're getting in the second round this year is going to compare to what DeAndre Hopkins can do to your team. But I told you I'd probably accept that deal. You get a second round pick. I mean, maybe you could flip the fifth for a fourth. Massage it a little bit. I mean, at the end of the day, like, a second round pick to me feels about right for a player that is not going to be part of your future. You're going to get a lot of cap in return. And that second round pick, you could deal for more picks. You could trade up. That's that second round pick should be a future, at least starter, if not, borderline Pro Bowler. I mean, the Cardinals have done their most damage in the second round.
Right.
You got to be thinking 4, 5, 6 years down the line with that pick.
Right.
Whereas DeAndre Hopkins, if he plays for you, is probably only on the team for another year. Is that worth it for you as a Cardinal fan?
It's not. I mean, a guy at the tail end of his career that cares about his legacy, and this is not an indictment on DeAndre Hopkins. He absolutely should. We heard JJ Watt talking about the short time frame that these players, especially these great players, have to really cash in, not only monetarily but also as far as winning football games. And DeAndre Hopkins staring down is the most confident Cardinals fan. It has to be realistic with where they are. Sure. Could they come out and be ahead of schedule like Seattle was with the rebuild? Sure. But the reality of all these picks hitting and them being as savvy in free agency as they possibly could, and coupling the talent on the roster, like this team is going to compete right away after being in the cellar of the NFC West, I think that you'd be a bit naive. And to be able to deal a contract of that caliber and move off of a top wide receiver, he's certainly still that. But at age 31 or entering his age 31 season, you have to be able to do that. He's your most valuable, controllable asset right now to create more assets. And I think that's what the Arizona Cardinals need. And a second and a fifth round pick, I think that's in the vicinity of what's really going to come in return for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. I don't doubt that. And Arizona Cardinals fans, when you see a second round pick and you're moving a wide receiver, you're snake bitten, and you're like, no, they're going to take an undersized wide receiver with that pick anyway, and it's going to be a waste. Like, okay, it's a new regime. It's not Steve Keim. It's not old Stevie Boy making the selections anymore.
He's gone.
Yeah, you can. Now, we don't know what Monti looks like as far as the drafting goes, but I think that it's gonna look better than having 1,000-yard receiver out of the 10 that you drafted.
Can't be worse. CB Craw 098, the exact type of culture guy this organization needs. I agree. Like, you want DeAndre Hopkins on your team, but you have to look past just D-Hop, the player in 2023. He's expensive, and he can help you expedite your mini rebuild here, at least for 2023. I mean, like, you look at the last couple of instances of when the Cardinals could have gotten value and they opted not to. Like, they should have dealt Patrick Peterson when his value was high, and then instead they got nothing for him, right? Like, if somebody would have told you, hey, the Cardinals are going to be bad this year, but J.J. Watt's going to have 13 sacks, should you trade him? And they probably would have said, well, no, we're going to see how we can do with J.J. Watt, and then it's not worth it, right? Like, I don't know, an 8-9 season with DeAndre Hopkins or a 9-8 season with DeAndre Hopkins, but you missed the playoffs, worth it? Maybe, but maybe you can go out and get help with a second round pick. I mean, Bo just mentioned, a third round pick and Alvin Kamara and a third round pick for Fred Warner. I mean, like, we should be thinking in those terms now, because you've got Dave Sears, who's helped run Detroit's rebuild, which is expedited. Go look at their roster. They fucked around and they've got, I believe, a top third roster in the NFL right now.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
That's right. Pick. And he was a late pick. You talk about trading up, having the capital to go get a Jameson Williams. So it's like, you trade picks. It doesn't even have to be for this year. You can double down and trade down and get more assets and then trade up for a draft pick that you want. But we need to be thinking of the mindset of big picture. DeAndre Hopkins is not part of this team for the long term. This is the Arizona Cardinals 2.0 with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is and really only Kyler Murray is the constant here. Everything else should be and will be on the table for this franchise. And again, This has nothing to do with DeAndre Hopkins, the player and the person. You commend what he did. He was certainly part of the solution, not part of the problem. It's one of the best trades in franchise history. But it's time to move on. And the Cardinals know that, and he will be traded. So again, for everybody holding out hope that he's going to stick around, they don't see the benefit of that. I've been told specifically, like the money is too much, $30 million.
Right. And it's probably the same people that were pounding the table like, oh, you let Chandler Jones go for nothing. It's like, well, Chandler Jones was over 30 years old, and you saw what he was going to command on the open market, and you saw what the Raiders paid him, and then you saw what at that point, at even playing across from a guy like Max Crosby, the production or lack thereof that he produced in this season, and what he was making for, in 2022. It's just that's the reality of this game. There's the exceptions, and we saw the exception to the rule play out until for 17 seasons in the NFL and Larry Fitzgerald. But that's really it. I mean, we've seen Tom Brady, you've seen the Larry Fitzgeralds, guys that produce into the late 30s.
Larry didn't miss games, and he was drafted by this franchise. Completely different scenario.
Right. So I mean, it's an asset that you can create more assets with. Like John Lynch, when he got into the GM role with San Francisco, all he did was just create more and more assets, more draft capital. And what have they turned that? They've turned out, one of the deepest rosters in the NFL. But a lot, obviously, you have to hit on those picks. That's really important here. It doesn't matter. I mean, Steve Keim, that was the biggest problem. That was the biggest paradox. Like, okay, you want him to trade down and create more assets, but do you have any faith in him turning those into anything? And luckily he didn't do that very often because
over on day 3,
the ability to do so.
Just take the day off. Just take the day, and that's why he had to go out and make D-Hop trades.
Hit auto draft on that. Yeah,
that's right. We got people asking about Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown's safe for next year. I think they picked up his 5th-year option, I think the Ravens did. Hollywood Brown makes a third of the money D-Hop makes, and he's younger.
Makes $13 million.
Yeah, so almost about a third. And so you got to try out a receiving core that has bodies, but also Hollywood Brown's value is not what D-Hop's value is. D-Hop has the reputation. I mean, Hollywood Brown, I don't even want to speculate, but what could you even get for Hollywood Brown at this point?
Right.
What could you even get for Rondell Moore? DeAndre Hopkins, again, will not be surprised if they get a late one for him. I'm not expecting that, but if Kansas City offered you pick 31 for DeAndre Hopkins, that shouldn't surprise anybody. But right. I think his value is going to be between pick 31, somewhere between pick 31 and probably 60. That you're going to get a pick in between there, and that hopefully is a future starter.
This was complete speculation. This was just I guess a media conglomerate, just kind of connecting the dots and just kind of figure out who could be players for Jerry Jeudy. And CBS Sports identified Jerry Jeudy as somebody that the Arizona Cardinals could go after. It's that'd be fine. No. If you're getting a body, but I just don't see the as far as what you're going to have to pay him soon and what you've seen from him. He had a stretch last season where he was legit, but at the same time, consistently, you haven't seen that. Unless Jonathan Gannon and Monti Ossenfort have a love affair there for a guy like Jeudy, I don't see any reasoning behind something like that either.
It would go against everything that they're talking about doing.
Right.
They're going to trade for somebody you immediately have to pay. They're going to do that they did that with Hollywood Brown.
Right.
They want cheap, young assets, their own guys. They don't want, Jerry Jeudy, you could argue, is damaged goods. If Denver's trying to get rid of Jerry Jeudy and they're lacking playmakers in that passing game and they're trying to elevate Russell Wilson, what does that say about Jerry Jeudy?
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you. If you could get him for a day 3 pick, I just don't, that to me that's not going to help the Arizona Cardinals in the short term and in the long term. I don't, the Cardinals are out of trading premium picks for veteran players, at least right now. They've exited that ballpark. You know what they're in? Asset acquisition, trying to get draft picks, trying to clear cap space, trying to get Kyler Murray back on the field and gelling with these new players. That, to me, they're going to sign players in free agency. We talked about it last week at nauseam, Bo, but I just don't, they're not going to play in the big name sandbox. They're going to try to get guys who Monti and Gannon know that can come here and help them cultivate a culture like Bruce Arians in 2013. But they're just, there's some laziness going on. Right. There was also a report that the Cardinals are interested in James Bradbury. No shit. They're going to be in on all the ex-Eagle guys.
Everybody from Philly.
They get? Right. Who can they get for cheap? Right. I don't think they're going to go and make James Bradbury the highest paid corner in the NFL.
Right.
Let's just They like all those guys. Gannon would bring them all here if he could, but they got to free up cap space. That's what they're trying to do.
I like JPE here. John Paul, CBS's hack sauce. That's not bad. just complete hack sauce. Aaron Cotton asking if Chosen Anderson is worth any picks. He recently went back to school, and I think that he's buying textbooks that are, I guess, have more value than he does. And that's not the word. That's not a huge indictment. I mean, textbooks are expensive. What are they, like $300 now? He
was an undrafted free agent, so he's made his money in the NFL. And if he's out of he looks like XFL right now. Like
Robbie Anderson.
Yeah,
he's gone.
I think he's in the XFL.
Give me that $12 million cap space. That's the easiest decision, Monti Ossenfort. If he's probably already communicated that to Anderson.
It's a forgettable trade. What's not forgettable is our coverage at GoPHNX.com. Check it out right now. Become a diehard. Pick up some exclusive merch from the PHNX merchandise locker. Read our guy Howard Balzer, who no doubt will be cranking out some premium content ahead of the NFL draft and free agency. Slam that promo code Howard, HOWARD. Bo and I are just hours away from taking off for the NFL Combine. And yes, oh yes, we'll be asking about new uniforms when Monti Ossenfort takes the podium tomorrow. He and Gannon both speak tomorrow. It's a special time of PHNX Cardinals, 2 p.m. live, Arizona time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. We'll have our reactions to what Gannon and company have to say, Bo. It's going to be a loaded Tuesday.
I'm also going to be a shoulder for our DNVR folks to cry on, since their OC and DC hires. This all-star staff from Sean Payton has turned into Vance Joseph and Joe Lombardi. Some 4-letter words from their former respective fan bases. How do you feel now? How do you feel about missing out on Sean Payton now?
Much better. And again, I'm not like sour grapes guy. Like, yes, do we want Sean Payton to fail? I want Sean Payton to fail, but I want our DNVR peeps to succeed. So it's weird. I love Zach and company.
Yeah.
But I mean, Gannon to me, and he may suck as a coach. I hope not. But he hasn't accomplished what Sean Payton has. With that being said, Sean Payton to me just feels like an out of touch, overpaid guy at this point. And Gannon and his staff remind me of a hungry staff that wants to prove everybody wrong.
Here's what I love about Gannon, and you can't say the same about Payton as of right now, is Gannon has an answer for every question that he's been asked. Anything from as far as how they want to play football to what they want to do in their scouting department, as far as their front office. He's got an answer for everything, and you're not seeing that. You see Sean Payton pushing back on social media about reports about his coaching staff saying, hey, we actually have hired this many. Just wait and see. It's like, no, there's full transparency from Gannon, and he's really confident about the coaching staff that he's building, and I'm pretty impressed by it so far already.
Real quick, so I dogged on Isaiah Simmons a lot last week, and I'm still in the camp that I think that they got some decisions to make on his cap space and fifth-year option.
Are you just trying to keep the streak going? Is that what's going on?
Well, here's the thing. I reached out to somebody this morning I trust, and
you want your Iron Man streak of shading Simmons to continue?
What's going on with Isaiah Simmons? And nothing's definitive. We don't know if he's getting his fifth-year option, but this source was very specific in telling me that Gannon has always made it a personal point of pride to go somewhere and take a player who maybe has underperformed and make them better than what they had previously been. Somebody who didn't have a clearly defined role, and he listed examples in Indy and Minnesota and Philadelphia. So I am not the biggest believer in Simmons sticking around long term, but if you're hoping to find some silver linings with Simmons and his development, and Gannon is not the kind of person that will turn their back on Simmons just because he doesn't have a position. But if Simmons repays the favor by not loving football and not being a football junkie, which he's been accused of being, that's not us speculating, that's out there, then that's when you've got a problem. So
yeah, but that doesn't give exude confidence that they're going to buy before May 2nd, the deadline, to pick up his fifth-year option. That
right, I don't know if that's
so. I mean, they could put him on a prove it type deal situation where, but it also burns the bridge potentially of him coming back if he does perform at a high level in his fourth season in the NFL, under Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rawls. So it's going to be, they are going to have to figure out a plan of how they want to approach and continue the development, jumpstart the development of Isaiah Simmons.
Is he the biggest question mark on the roster, in your opinion?
On the defensive side, probably.
Just on the team, like we know Hopkins is getting traded.
No,
like, when
I think that continues to be Kyler Murray just because he's coming off of a serious injury and one of his worst performances. But and the position is so valuable, it's so important. So
isn't that crazy?
He got the big extension. So
Kyler goes first in 2019, Isaiah goes first in 2020, and those are the two biggest question marks on the team. Not great. Got to figure that out. Got to figure some shit out. Figure out how to subscribe to the PHNX Cardinals podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Like this video, share it around the YouTube algorithm. Again, Bo and I live every day from the NFL Combine beginning mañana. Buckle up. It's draft season. Bo and I are here for the long haul, owning the offseason, only like PHNX Cardinals can. For Bo Brock, at Bo Brock, I'm Johnny Venerable. We'll see you tomorrow.